Hi, this is Matt at The Turning Gate, and in this video I want to talk to you about RSS in Backlight 3. RSS is really simple syndication, and it's basically a way that visitors to your website can subscribe to a content feed so that when you make new updates to your site, they will receive those updates in their feed reader, and they can know there's something new to see on your website without having to check in with your website every single day. It's a really nice way to allow people to passively follow your content updates. So RSS is something that is typically used in the world of blogging, but in Backlight 3 we've implemented RSS for photo albums, which I think is a really cool new feature and something that you don't often see in image galleries. Like, I think this really helps Backlight 3 to stand out as a way to interact socially with your audience. So in this video, we're going to look at the RSS settings and setup within Backlight 3. I'm going to go over a little bit how the whole thing sort of works. And then we're going to dive into the designer, and I'm going to show you some different ways that you can work to expose these feeds to your visitors. And exposing them at all is optional because people who are familiar with RSS typically know how to figure this stuff out. But if you want to really broadcast like, hey, we have RSS feeds, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can do that. So as a first stop, let's go into Backlight Settings. I'm here on the right-hand side of my screen. You can see I've got the Backlight admin. I'm going to go into Backlight Settings, and I'm going to scroll down to the RSS Feed section, which is here. And you can see there's just there's five items. So there are two different kind of feeds, potentially a third. I'll get to that, but here in settings there's only two. So one is the site RSS feed, and you can read a little bit about how these, what these settings do by hovering over the info bubbles. But the site RSS feed is for the overall site, and you will get this feed when you're digging for feeds on any page that is not an album. So that could be like your home page, your about page, your contact page. I think also album sets fall into would get the site feed. And the site feed updates whenever you add an album to your site. So it's going to be something that is infrequently updated, as it's only going to be updated when you create a new album. Oh, and while I'm here, let me also say that the RSS feeds are something that are going to be a bit of a moving target. It's something that we want to continue to flesh out as we update Backlight 3. And so the information in this video may change a little bit depending on when you're actually watching it. Like, I'm going to discuss it as it is today. 6 months from now, things might be slightly different. So just be aware that if you're watching this and it's at this time of viewing an older video, things may be a little bit different, but I think all of the sort of fundamental concepts that we're going to be discussing should be relatively the same. So yes, the site RSS feed will update when you add a new album to your site, and by default it will show, or the feed will contain the most recent 20 content additions. So the most recent 20 albums that you've created will be in the feed. And then you can add a RSS description, which for me is blank. Shame on me. I need to fill that in later. But yeah, so let's take a quick look at the site feed before we go any further. So here's the Turning Gates instance of Backlight. This is the home page. And if I want to see the RSS feed, I can get there a couple of different ways. I can just go up to the URL and I can put the word feed with a trailing slash on the end of the URL, and I can go that way. And leave back out. We'll come back in a second. The other way is I can actually look at the page's source code, view page source, and then I can search the source code for the word feed. It shows up here in the head of the document, and I can click that link to look at the feed. So two ways of getting to the same location. But the feed itself is in XML, which is a structured markup language, kind of like looking at an outline. So it's really easy to see what's in here. There's just some garbage at the top that defines it as an RSS feed and XML format. Then you've got the channel. And then within that, you've got all of the items. So here's the title for the feed, the turning gate. I've got a URL, a link. Here's my empty description tags, again, because in my settings, I did not fill out a description. I need to do that. And then we have the items, and each item is an entry, a content entry. So here is the video embed, which was a demo album that I published recently for the theater add-on. That was the most recent thing I added to the website. Before that is a film strip item, which is, again, another demonstration for the theater add-on, the Vegas slideshow. So the panorama, you can see I've been adding new albums for the theater add-on demonstrations, and those are the most recent things I've published. So the feed will contain the most recent 20 items, if there are as many as 20, because that's what I have in my settings. And this is always going to be the source of truth. If you're ever wondering what's in your feed, look at the feed itself. Do not look at your subscription to the feed in a reader, because readers, when they get that feed, will do whatever they want. And there might be options in your reader that say, you know what, instead of showing me everything, only show me the newest 10. So even though the feed has 20 items, maybe your reader is only going to show you 10. Or maybe you visited recently, and so it's not showing you previously read items, and so you only see 2 new things, and that's all that's there. It's not because there's only 2 items in the feed, it's only because there are only 2 new items that you haven't read yet. So depending on what service you're using to follow the feed, what your personal settings are, and how that service behaves, like what you see in your reader is not always going to be an accurate representation of what is actually in the feed. And therefore, the feed itself, this XML, should always be your source of truth anytime you have a question about, hey, what's in this feed? All right, so that said, let's go ahead and subscribe to this feed. So I could copy and paste the feed URL, but most readers are smart enough to figure that out anyway, because as we've already seen, the feed is in the head of the document. It's in the source code for the page. So generally, if I want to subscribe, the only thing I need to use is the page address. So I am going to go over here to Feedly, which is a very popular service for following RSS feeds. A lot of people use it. I don't actually read feeds in Feedy, but I do use it to manage the feeds that I'm subscribed to. And then for reading, what I typically do is I've got apps on my iPhone and my iPad that sync with my Feedly feed, or my Feedly subscriptions, rather. When I'm looking at RSS feeds, my favorite way to do that is on the iPad. I really like to read my RSS feeds on the tablet. It's just a really nice display for reading, and it's a really nice way to navigate the content. And for Backlight 3 is super iPhone, iPad friendly. So if I want to jump to someone's website from the feed, it's a great way to view their content. So if I want to add this feed to my Feedly subscriptions, I just click the plus button, I drop in that URL, and then it brings it up, the turning gate right there. And then it gives me a little preview of what all is in there. I can follow it. I can add it to the Backlight 3 collection. And then I can look at the feed. And as you can see, it's showing me a visual representation of everything that we just saw here in the XML. So the first item is video embed. Well, look at that. The first item here is video embed. The next one is film strip. And then the next one here in Feedly is film strip. So as you can see, it's a one-to-one translation, the XML to what displays in the reader. And then if I were to create a new album, it will become the newest entry in this RSS feed, and it will update in my reader. And we'll see an example of that a little later on when we get there. So that's the site feed. The other type of feed that we have in Backlight 3 is the album feed. And this is the one that really excites me personally. Let me just put this away for a moment. Actually, sorry, I want to get back into the settings. So again, we have to enable these separately. We enable the album RSS feeds, and again, you can set a number. By default, it's 20. And so every album on your website will have its own individual RSS feed, which is really, really cool because it allows people to follow the albums that interest them. So if I go into the galleries, we'll just dive into one of these demonstrations, the classic grid, sure. And to get at the feed, all you need to do, again, you can look at the source code and you can do it the same way we did it there, or you just add feed with a trailing slash to the end of the URL, and then you can look at its feed. Now, the big difference is that the items in this feed is going to be one item per image for whatever number you've set, in this case 20. The 20 most recently added images to your album are going to appear as items in the RSS feed. So you can see here that for this item, I've got the title of the image, and if your image does not have a title, it will be displayed as untitled. There's a description, which comes from the image caption. We've got a link, and this goes to the single image HTML page. So basically, it's the permalink for that image in your gallery. And then there's a publish date. So that's the information that appears for every image. So again, what I can do, if I want to subscribe to this album, I just grab the URL of the album, I come over to my RSS service or my app, I drop it in there, I get the Turning Gate Classic Grid, I can follow that, add it to Backlight 3, nope, that's the other one, there's the new one. And as you can see, I've got all of the same images that are in here. But you can also notice like the first image here is not the first image in the album, and again that's because like the album sequence is custom. I've arranged these images the way that I want them to appear in the album, but the feed is showing me the one that was most recently published. The one with the newest publish date is first, so that when I add a new image to the album, it's going to appear first. So yeah. Those are the basics, how the RSS system works in Backlight 3. Now, I did mention that you might have a third feed, and that's going to be if you're running a WordPress for your blog. Even if you're using the TTG or the Backlight theme, the WP theme add-on for Backlight 3, WordPress is going to have its own feed. It's going to do its own thing. So, at the Turning Gate, obviously, I have a blog. It's where we publish our updates. And if I grab that URL, that's another one that I can add here. The Turning Gate. I'm going to follow this one. I'm going to add it also to Backlight 3. And it's going to be this top one, right? Yep, and there's the blog feed. So you get all the updates. So it's really cool because you've got these different aspects of the site you can follow, but I haven't exposed these feeds in any way. So people who are savvy with RSS can certainly find these things out, but they might grab one of your feeds without realizing that there are other different feeds. Like there's nothing and nowhere that says, hey, we've got 3 different types of feeds, subscribe to the ones that you want. So they might subscribe to my blog feed, but then they're not going to get my album updates. Or they might subscribe to the album updates thinking they're going to be able to follow my blog that way, but they're never going to see the blog updates. And admittedly, that can be a little confusing. So you might want to expose your feeds in some way. So let's get into that. I'm going to go back into Backlight's settings. And we're going to be jumping around a little bit. I hope that I'm going to be able to land on a linear path that we can follow to get this done. For now, I'm going to jump back to home, and I've already got a page. We're going to go to pages. I've got this playground page that I've created. So I'm just going to go to playground. And designer, templates, we're going to mess with the RSS page template. So a one thing you can do, and you can say I've already got an RSS button up here in the header. Let me just wipe that out, and then I can show you how I made it. All right, so now there's nothing up there. You can see I've got the Get Backlight 3, the View Cart, and a search button and a menu button. And so what I want to do is I want to add an RSS button here. So if I, in the page template, I scroll down to the social media section, social media links, I'm going to select solid, and you might have a few other options. Like there's probably a regular and a light. I think there's probably a duotone. You can probably use any of these. So see which one of the icon styles you like best, but I'm going to go with solid for now. And then for the icon's name, you just put in RSS, and then you paste in your RSS feed. For me, I would probably use either my site feed or my blog feed, depending on which one I felt as the creator is the most important. And I'm going to save those. And when I refresh, now I have an RSS button that is going to, when I click it, opens up that feed. So people can come to my website, they see the RSS button, they can right click on it, they can copy the link address, and they can go drop that into their feed reader and subscribe that way. The other thing you can do is you set a menu. So I've got a playground menu selected as the menu for this page template. So I am going to go to the menu sets. And I've already done this, but hey, that's just, let me remove this and I'll make a new one. So I'm going to click add, give it a name, RSS. It's going to link to a URL. I'm going to give it the address of the feed that I want the menu item to use. I'm going to choose to open the link in a new tab. That way they can either right click it to copy it, or if they click it, it'll just open a new tab, and then they can still go to the tab that is just the website, and that makes it really convenient. So if I save that change and then refresh my page and drop out here, you can see I've now got this RSS item in my navigation menu, and that will also give them the feed. So they can either click on it and go there, and then they can copy it from the address bar, or they can right click it and they can copy the link address and they can paste that into their feed reader. So it seems like a really obvious and easy way to add them to your navigation or to your collection of buttons at the top of the page. But that really only lets you get one feed, whichever you deem is most important. And I could add 3 different buttons, or I could add 3 different menu items, but then your menu gets really messy and long, and it's confusing that there's like 3 different RSS items in your menu. I don't feel like that's the best thing. So there's more that we can do. Let's do a page. So let me, thinking. I'm going to go to pages. I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to call this page RSS Feeds. The identifier can be RSS Feeds or RSS or whatever. It doesn't matter. Add. So now I have a new page. So let's go to our new page, RSS Feeds. And I'm just going to use the default page template so that does not have the buttons we just created in the playground page, because we're not going to use them for this. And what I'm going to do here is just go into the page copy area, and I'm going to delete what's there by default. And I'm going to write in, our website supports a number of different RSS feeds. Please choose the feeds of most interest to you. If you would like to know when we publish new albums, please follow the site feed. And we got a couple different ways that we can do this. We could do like Markdown, like site feed with the feed address, which is really easy. But when they click the link, it's going to load the feed in the current tab. So maybe instead of that, I want to use HTML, and I'm going to target a new tab. So I can do open tag a href equals and my site feed target equals underscore blank site feed, site feed, and then close the tag. So I'll take that and I'll use it to replace this. And I could do, if you would like to follow our blog, please use the blog feed. And again, so I'm going to href equals, I'm going to put in my blog address, so blog turninggate.net / I think it's probably also feed. I'm not entirely sure because that's a WordPress thing. Let's try it real fast. Yep, the blog address plus feed, just the same as we've done with Backlight. So then target equals blank blog feed, and then I will take this and use it to replace the words in this sentence. And then you may also follow any individual photo album, to receive updates when we add new images to that album. Please visit our galleries to follow those feeds. And then for galleries, I'm just going to make it a link to the galleries section of the web page. Galleries. And I did this very quickly. You can add more or less information as you please. You could add an image to it or whatever. You could use some font awesome icons to make it look nice. There's lots you can do, but the point is, like, I have a reference page where people can go, and I would then want to go into my menu sets. Let's use the playground menu again. And instead of RSS, like this link to an RSS, I might do like RSS feeds and page, and then I would select the RSS feeds page and save that change. And so now I have an RSS feeds menu item that goes to this page that has info about all the different feeds. And you could even make this sort of a more general like follow us page where maybe you've got all of your feeds the way that I've shown you here, but you also add like sign up to your newsletter, or you add your contact form. Like you could have the feeds information on your contact page or your about and contact page. So there's lots of different ways that you can approach this, but again, I just wanted to show you how you could, write it out to expose in one place. Like, hey, these are all the feeds that we have available on our website, and you can choose to follow our website by whichever of these that you would find useful. All right, so that's that. Let's look at the album feeds and something that we can do in our album templates. So I want to go back to my templates page. I'm going to, here in the website, jump over to galleries. I'm going to go into the secret area, and we're going to create a new album here in secret. I've already created the RSS album template, so I can just jump straight to the publisher, and then we'll return here. So publisher is here. We're going to go into albums. I am going to go into secret. I am going to create an album, and I'm just going to call it RSS album. I'm going to select the RSS album template, and we're going to save that. So here's that. Now, assuming that this album were created publicly, it's available for public viewing, then the fact that I just created this album will appear in the site feed, which maybe we should observe that. I think that's a public album. If it's not, we'll find out in a second. But I put it into a hidden set, so maybe it won't be. Feed. Nope, it's in a hidden set, so it did not appear in the feed. It is not a public album. So things that you're hiding won't show up there, which I'm sure you're happy to know. But that's, well, before we add photos, let's just subscribe. So I'm going to copy that, go to Feedly. We are going to subscribe to RSS album. We're going to follow it, add it to Backlight 3. That's not the one. That's not the one. This is the one, RSS album. So as you can see, there's nothing here because we haven't published any images. So let's add some photos first, and then we'll get into editing the actual template to do some things. So I'm going to take these 4 images, I'm going to drag them, upload them. So here they are. If I refresh my album, you can see that we now have images. If I go back and I refresh my feed, okay, so it took a moment, but I refreshed my reader, and now you can see that the images I just published are showing up here in the RSS album feed. So that happened pretty quickly, which makes me happy. And now when you can see I've got a thumbnail for every image. It shows the title. These are all untitled images. If I click on an entry, it shows me a larger view of that single entry. I can visit the website, and that takes me to the permalink, the single image page for that image. And then from there, I can navigate the HTML pages, or I can jump back into the album grid. So that all works really nicely. So let's get back into our template, RSS album. So what I've done, and I've done it off screen, so let me just blank that out for now. Okay, so when you're editing a template, you have a template copy, and what I can do is I can add to my template copy, follow this album's RSS feed. And again, just like before, I can either use Markdown, or I can use HTML. And the advantage being that if I use HTML, then I can supply this target attribute that will open the link in a new tab instead of the current tab, RSS feed. And I close that tag. So in both cases, what we're going to want to do here is, because we want this to work for every album, so we're not going to give it a specific address. I'm going to open, for the Markdown, I'm going to open the parentheses. I'm going to use period, slash, feed, slash, and then close those parentheses. And so the period means current URL, like use this album's address, and then add the word feed to it. So I'll take that period slash feed slash. I'm also going to add that to the href in my HTML. And then you can choose which one of these you want to use. So for me personally, I prefer that clicking on it would open a new tab, because I don't want them to lose their view of the album. So I'm going to take the HTML version, I'm going to delete the Markdown, and I'm going to replace the text with the HTML and save that change. So there it is on the page, and if I click on it, you can see it's going to open the album feed in a new tab, and there are 4 images currently in this album. You can see that there are 4 items beginning here, and then this pattern repeats. So it's 1 item per image. And this will appear in every album, but it doesn't have to appear in every album. So, and this is one of the reasons, like, it's really cool to add this to the album template, because then it's always there and you can use it, but it's an option. So you can actually edit the individual album. So I'm going to go back to Publisher. I'm going to dive in to the settings for the RSS album that we just created. We're going to do Edit. And then we can go into the page content section. So you've got main copy, and this is where you write whatever you want to write. So these are some images I took in Golden Gate Park. And then even when it's blank, you have this choice, but you can choose main copy placement. It can either be, you can use it to replace the template copy, or you can position this copy above the template or below it. So if I have an album where I don't want this RSS feed to show, like maybe because it's just an album of images that is never going to change. It is last year's portfolio. It is fixed in time. I will never add new images to it. Therefore, there is no reason to have an RSS feed on this album. Now, it will exist. People can follow it if they want to, but maybe you don't want to advertise that the feed exists. So we don't want this text from the template. In that case, we just choose to replace the template copy. We save that change. Let me close this or reduce the size of it. So now we have just the description for the album, and we do not have that RSS link. But if I have an album of, these are recent images and I'm updating it all the time, I'm adding things, and I want people to be able to follow it, I can use this same template, but when I'm creating the specific album that uses the template, instead of choosing replace the template copy, I can put the album description above or below the album or the template copy. So I could do that. And then I get both things. I get the album description, but then I also get the template copy on the same page. And then people know that there's this RSS feed they can access. So, I mean, this is probably my favorite thing to do, especially because I want this available for people to use for their albums. And it can really work to facilitate communication between the photographer and the client. For example, if you do a portrait session with someone and then you send them a link to the album where you're dumping their images as you work on them, they can follow that RSS feed. And then as you continue to process images over time, you can add them to the album, and then they can, in their reader, if they're using an RSS reader, they can see when you've added a new image and they can go look at it. Or, if you're doing a remote product shoot for a client and you just are, you can publish images from the shoot as you take them, and they can get notified on their iPad or whatever, wherever they are, that you've done another product piece and you're for the job, and then they can log in and they can check the image you've just taken. So there's a lot of possibilities here, whether it's interacting with the client or like a commercial client, or interacting with like a session client after a shoot, or if it's just like an interest album, like you're really into underwater photography and people who are also into underwater photography maybe just want to follow your underwater album and not your travel album or your landscapes album or whatever, like they can do that. So yeah, that's really cool. The other thing that I'll mention that you could do, and I'm not going to get into it because it's a little beyond the scope of this video, but you could use PHP plugins to create a dynamic RSS link and have it be like, if this is an album, show the album link, and if it's not an album, show the site feed or show the blog feed. So that's all, again, stuff that is possible to do. If you're interested in that, let me know, and maybe I can put that code together and I can post it in the forum for people. But not going to go into it in this video. Speaking of the forum, though, we do have the new community forum. It's at discourse.theturningGate.net. And I would really love it if you all would go into the user showcase and create a new topic that has a link to your website, especially if you have RSS feeds enabled, because then I can go in and visit your site and I can subscribe to your feed. And that would be awesome for me because I really want to see what you're creating. I am one of the creators of Backlight, and I'm really interested in seeing how people are using Backlight 3. So if you drop a link in the showcase, not only does it, it's a way of sharing your site with other Backlight users. And like I go in here, I feature these in newsletters. I like to visit your sites. I like to see what you've created. But then now with Backlight 3, it can also follow your RSS feeds, and that means I can keep up with your work. I can follow your updates, just because we have some really amazing photographers in our community, and I would love to be able to see the work that you're creating as you're creating it and as you're adding it to your website. So please swing by the forum, post a new topic in the showcase, and share your site with us. and make sure you have the RSS feeds enabled so that we can follow along and see all the new work that you're creating as you create it. I think that's going to be a wrap for my coverage of RSS feeds. I know this has been a long video. If you're still with me, I really appreciate you sticking through it to the end. I hope you've learned something. And I hope that RSS feeds are one of the new features in Backlight 3 that really excites you and something that you intend to use for your website and possibly to improve the way that you run your photography. Until next time, when we see you in another Backlight 3 video, I hope you all have excellent days and happy photo shoots. Thanks for your time.